Not like that, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Exactly. Would it really surprise? I mean, let's be honest.
Yes.
Come on, Shatner.
I love Star Trek and I love Captain Kirk, but if there's like, oh, they just released a shocking tape of William Shatner saying the N-word 15 times, like,
is it really shocking?
Is it really shocking?
Please don't Shatner, please don't do a racism.
Well, because I mean, politically, Shatner seems more or less okay. Like, he leans to the left. He's not like super far to the left, but he's mostly on the right side of everything. But
he's also made some pretty good atheist noises too.
Yeah, I think he kind of is one. I don't know if he's ever come out and said,
he's an actor. Come on, we know how liberal they are.
Yeah, except for
all the ones that run for office.
Except for the ones that aren't, and they are like crazy.
Yeah, Tim Allen, The Rock,
Sonny Bono.
Yep, Sonny Bono.
John Voight. John Voight is like completely off the deep end. It's like, wow, when that snake swallowed him in Anaconda, he just lost it.
James Woods.
James Woods, yeah.
No,
James Woods is particularly bad.
Yeah.
I've always said John Voight is like Vladimir Putin if Putin was an actor.
Oh my God.
So does John Voight want to bring Russia all the way back to like in Nicholas Tsar's time? Because that's what Putin wants, honestly. And what does that play into like the topic if Cat 17 is here? It's okay if it's not getting ripped on like other things.
Yeah. I have to say something as it comes to that. There was a wonderful piece this morning on CBS Sunday Morning. It's probably on the website if you want to catch it. There was a considerable discussion about Putin and regarding the Ukraine and particularly Putin's claim that Ukraine has always been a part of Mother Russia, which is a load. And apparently the struggle for that goes back easily over 1,000 years, if I understood things correctly.
Yeah.
It's not part of Russia? It never was?
No, it is not.
No.
Ukraine has constantly fought to be its own country.
Yeah.
And apparently this was going on back in the Tsarist era.
Oh, yeah.
It was going on even before the Tsarist era. And of course, now you've got Putin, who basically, he says he doesn't want NATO on his doorstep, which hasn't happened yet, but it's happening in other places. And he's either just ignoring that or who knows what. But
NATO is already on the doorstep. There
are other countries that are immediately adjacent to Russia that are NATO signatories.
Yeah.
And the other thing that they pointed out, and frankly, this is disturbing as hell to me, is apparently in that hour-long rant that he gave, where he's supposedly justifying Russia's invasion of Ukraine, apparently that rant was none too coherent, and apparently neither is Vlad. And that plus the fact that he's threatened the use of nuclear weapons, and indeed right now, his nuclear arsenal is on high alert. I don't know how well I'm sleeping tonight.
I've heard that too, that I hadn't heard that until recently, but I've heard that too, that he's not doing terribly well mentally, which
Yeah, and apparently oligarchs aren't happy with him much either because they're being sanctioned to hack.
Yeah. Well, it's that part of it is not anything terribly new either, if you go back and specifically with like Russian history, if you go back through the history of the Tsars and the Romanovs, like whenever, and even beyond that, like monarchy in Europe, whenever a king was assassinated or deposed or whatever, it was often because he had done something that was costing the nobles money.
Leave it to everyone with a lion shield to end the world.
Yeah, that reminds me. I read this. I think it was in this morning's PD. There's been a lot of talk about Russia being cut off from SWIFT. It's already happened locally, and there's 2 or 3 banks that have basically gone. You're out of here.
Okay, so
now,
guys,
they haven't done it globally yet.
Okay.
But I mean, the fact is, Biden's following through on his threats.
Vovacat has rejoined
us.
Go ahead.
So sorry, I wanted to tell you.
this might be the last time I'm capable of going online with you, because going online with you depends directly on me being able to pay you through Patreon. And this might not be the case the next month. Not because I don't want to, but because it might not be even possible. Because the sanctions include the thing about like US companies not being able to accept payments from Russian banks. I'm not sure if this is the case. If it is the case, I will be on your next stream. I will be doing everything I can to do it, because, you know, we don't know where this is going the next month. But this is bad. Like, this is really, really freaking bad. Are we online?
Yes, we are. We are live.
I just wanted to tell you the story. Sorry for like interrupting, but you started talking on the subject, and it's important because basically on February 24th, we all wake up to like a rude awakening. This was awful to all of us. Like me and all my friends, we are all freaking out. My best friend right now is like taking active quantities of antidepressants because she's basically incapable of thinking. She works in IT and she doesn't know where this is going. The biggest thing I am afraid of right now is our government basically deciding to cut off the internet altogether right now, because yes, this is the important thing. This is the important thing you got to realize. Russia is a country where the official television and radio is basically propaganda. We don't have reliable news on TV and radio. It's not possible like to get any reliable info from there. And even though this is the case, nobody like from basically people who are widely seen, from famous people, from popular people, nobody is supporting this out loud. Everybody who did anything to say, who said anything out loud about it, basically was against it. I'm having an incoming. You may talk about something. I'll be back in 5 minutes. Okay.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, I want to throw one more thing in that struck me as being very important. There was a gentleman they interviewed on CBS Sunday Morning who was asked, if you had to describe Vladimir Putin in one word, what would that word be? And the guy barely hesitated. He said, isolated. He's isolated from the West. He's isolated from his people, and he's isolated from reality. And I mean, you want to talk about a scary combination? There you are.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it was telemarketing anyway. So the thing about Putin is that basically I was talking on like Jesse Gender's Discord about this, and people told me some people are calling Putin like legitimately unironically crazy, and I'm pretty sure technically it's not even the case. Just like for the last 20 years or something, he surrounded himself with like the least impressive yes man he could find. Like the least impressive of them, people who can't basically argue with him, people who can't weigh in on anything, and he jailed or sent away the rest. So the people who surround Putin are incapable of weighing in on his opinions. And like this guy is even so out of touch that he's even not aware of how inflation works. He still thinks that like the median salary in our country, which is basically poverty at this point, is normal for like middle class. That's the thing about him. He doesn't know how money works. Whenever he walks in Moscow, like 3 blocks around get blocked with snipers. Like not just security, legit snipers on the roofs. That's how paranoid he is. And the other thing, again, so all the famous people are weighing in. They are all against. They are signing open letters. Some people are protesting, but that's dangerous. And the thing is, official propaganda and official, like our ministry that's in control of the information, they are basically trying to ban all the media outlets to say the word war. They are like, this is not war, this is not invasion, this is not aggression. You're officially banned from using these words to describe it. This is a special military operation. It's clean, it's fast, it's not against Ukrainian people, it's against the Nazis.
Are they fooling anyone?
Sorry?
Are they fooling anyone?
No, that's the thing. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure anybody really believes that. I mean, there are some people.
Are they attempting to fool anyone, or are they attempting to dominate them and get them to go along with it anyway?
No, they are definitely fooling someone, because again, even like my mother, she's like when were all those anti-war people the last 8 years whenever Ukraine was bombarding poor Donbass? Whenever, like, okay, some people legitimately believe that there are like hardcore nationalists in Ukraine. And granted, in 2014, when the Crimea thing happened, there were like a pretty strong anti-Russian sentiment in Ukraine. It was a thing. I'm not saying it wasn't a thing. It was a thing. There's this slur that they are very oftenly and very openly using whenever describing Russians. Like, have you ever heard the word "moskal"?
No.
No, so. It's an anti-Russian slur, and a lot of Ukrainians are heard using it, but it's not N-word bad. It's not that bad. It's not it's not offensive all by itself. It's offensive in the way of how you use it.
Gotcha.
Like, no Russian uses this word. It's purely a Ukrainian word. It's arguably a Ukrainian language word.
Yeah.
It comes from the word Moscow, actually. So not technically offensive in its own right, but you know, there was an anti-Russian sentiment. And of course, in 2014, there were some nationalists in Ukraine, but pretty much the same amount as in any other place.
Right.
They were just very outspoken about it, because you know the right-wing militias, you give them someone to fight, you give them guns, and they do it. They are eager to do it. They like shooting people. Yeah. So yeah, there were some.
Yeah, we got lots of them here.
Yeah. There were some right-wing militias in Ukraine, and they were fighting on the side of Ukraine against Russia in 2014. That's true. But a minority. Right now, our government is claiming that the most resistance they are encountering on the way to Kyiv is basically those Nazis, not the military, which is again not true.
Yeah, the way I hear it, they've run into a lot more resistance than they were anticipating.
Yeah, they are facing a lot more resistance than they were anticipating. Again, CNN reports and other reports from the Western media, they're like showing that Ukrainians are basically arming themselves. They are basically giving like guns and Molotov cocktails to their own people, and people are willing to do it. Again, so this is one idea that I wanted to share with you, because I came up with it while arguing with one of my acquaintances about like gun rights and the Second Amendment thing. So I came up with this idea that actually there is a point in life when arming people is better for their safety than not arming people. But whenever you reach that point, whenever you cross that point, you are officially into wartime territory.
Right.
Yeah.
Basically, in any peaceful country, like basically Russia right now, or like any country in Europe right now, arming people will do more harm than good. More people will kill themselves from anger and stupidity than whoever may protect themselves with such guns.
And you can see that 30,000 plus people, you know, in the U.S. die every year because of exactly that.
Yeah, because stupidity and anger.
Training.
But yeah, exactly. I would say that you need to arm people before that, simply for the purpose of training, not actually granting them arms, but granting them training in how to use them.
Training in arms,
so that if and then not necessarily everybody having access to weapons all the time, specifically some of the higher end, so they're ready.
Well, but whenever because a lot of I was going to say real quick, a lot of gun rights people in the U.S. they'll try to use the Swedish or the Swiss model, because pretty much everybody is trained, and actually in that case you actually issue weapons, but they don't issue any ammo. You can't get ammo for love or money. And you have the weapon, but it's perfectly useless to you. And that if there's a wartime event, then they will issue ammunition. So I say, so I'll always say, okay, fine, let's switch to the Swiss model. They're like, no, which tells me that the argument is complete bullshit. Like, okay, so you brought it up, and then I say, let's do that. And you say,
like
no.
you can you have guns, but you only ever sell blanks.
Yeah, and see, part of the problem here with our right wingers is that they have this fantasy that they're going to be like the militiamen of the Revolutionary War, and they're going to fight against the big thing. Of course, it's bullshit. They're not. They're it's not like Canada's suddenly going to invade us, or Mexico's going to suddenly invade us.
Well, they still believe something else is going to come from Mexico, but that's because racism.
Because the gun laws were made to be like, if the black people rise up, then we got.
Exactly. No, that was the whole point, because the Haitian Revolution happened like in 1791, and that was like just like right across the pond over from the south and stuff like that. So the Southern plantation owners were definitely worried about their slaves rising up. That's the whole point for the Second Amendment.
There's a reason that Second Amendment is worded that way, with the militias being able to keep the state. was about slaves revolting.
Either slave revolts or Native American revolts or something.
Oh yeah,
like
definitely.
That.
Because because Wounded Knee was like something, as it were. It's like the Lakota people like were able to defend themselves, as it were. Custer did not make a last stand, if I remember correctly.
No,
he basically
his hubris basically led himself into an ambush because he was going around killing the native populations, and they fought back.
Yeah, exactly.
They were smart and good tacticians, unlike the savages they were painted to be. Yeah. And we didn't like that.
You can argue whether or not it's historically accurate, but I still think the discussion between Little Big Man and Custer in the movie of that same name is one of the most wonderful encapsulations of that whole situation. You go down there if you've got the nerve.
Apparently,
he did, and he got his ass handed to him.
Apparently, in the Star Trek TNG universe, Commander Riker actually has a descendant who's from Custer. Like I think it was at the right before the Enterprise encounters the Romulan battle fleet that was supposed to be defector, and then Picard mouths to Riker. It's kind of like your ancestors, Custer at Little Bighorn. Riker's like, I hope we have our luck. So I wonder. Okay. When you said Custer, that popped in my mind. I don't know if that was just them just putting it in the script or.
I guess he had kids before the battle.
John Burns has an interesting point. Hey, Canada's already invading with politeness and Queen's English.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to push back on that because with one exception, Canada has been there for every U.S. misadventure in the last 30, 40 years. They're doing all the same stupid shit we are. They're just nicer about it.
Canada.
I like Avril Lavigne more than just the Biebers.
Canada is our best friend who supports us no matter what, even when they shouldn't.
Right, exactly.
He's our little brother. Can we invade this country? Only if you bring Canada along.
Yeah, bring Canada. Come on, Canada doesn't get out as often as we do. Bring Canada
just
along.
Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing that basically, imagine living under Trump, waking up tomorrow and realizing that your country is basically invading Mexico aggressively and actively.
I was actually afraid that would happen.
Yes. For no reason.
Yeah. For no reason, exactly.
That was a real fear the whole time.
I know.
I mean, that would have been horrible, but again, it probably would not have been a surprise. If we would have been like, oh Jesus Christ, but then but we would have also been like, yeah, I mean, that's
okay. The thing here,
we saw it coming. We saw it coming.
Exactly.
The thing here is that. Sorry. I know I'm interrupting you, but I just really wanted to say those things out loud because when I'm talking to you here, I at least feel seen. I at least feel like, not all the Russians are those awful Nazis, fascists, or whatever, or whoever. Granted, we have people like this. It's true. We have some propaganda victims. We have people like my mom who says, whatever. Ukrainians started it first. The deal. She still hates the war part of it, but she also claimed things like, why was nobody outraged whenever the United States invaded Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan and all the other places?
Syria.
People were outraged at Vietnam and Iraq.
He was talking about the international community. Why weren't the United States sanctioned out of the world arena for that?
One of the things that's going on right now as it comes to that is apparently Russian media has been basically feeding off of Fox like there's no tomorrow. Tucker Carlson has got to be the golden boy of Moscow at this point.
He is, and they are very similar in their rhetoric. They are basically they are the same party at this point. Tucker Carlson and Russian propaganda.
We're sorry.
So Fox News is effectively for Lauren will recognize this, and I'm sure Vlad will. Fox News is now TASS. And basically, and here's the other thing that's kind of funny and ironic, and I'm not sure it got completely accidental. So Trump has his new social media platform.
Yeah.
In Russian, it would be called Pravda. It's true
social.
It would be.
Yeah.
So it totally would be.
So I guess now if Fox News is now tasked and Fox News, is now trying to simp for Putin, it's like, can I simp for Castro now? I don't know.
Well, he's dead, but there's another Castro in charge of Cuba, last I heard. Nick, you have a point that you wanted to bring up.
Okay, so two things. We're doing something really stupid right now. Is that we're punishing Russian Americans. Punishing like Russian college students here. You're saying like, oh, let's just send them back, or let's just not give them any more money.
No, they don't want to go back. I don't want to.
It's like, what's that going to do?
Yeah.
Oh, nothing. It's just going to make some people feel good. It'll make them feel like they're doing something. It's so foolish, because we know that like 99% of Russians are against this, at least over here. And we see, the massive protests erupting in Russia itself. We know that it's basically just Putin lashing out at the world because he has a bruised ego and he's not used to being told.
Yeah, we are not Nazi Germany. There are no pro-war marches here. No flags.
Yeah.
But the other thing I wanted to bring up, what's really stupid is how Republicans here are taking Putin's side. And I love what Cenk Uygur pointed out recently, is that the main reason they're doing it is because he is kind of what they wanted Trump to be. He's this tough guy, this strong man who oppresses people, and most importantly, he's white. If he wasn't white, I don't think Republicans would side with him nearly as much. But they look at Putin and they want that so badly to come here.
The strong man.
So badly to have a
Putin is just better at strong man than Trump. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. Isaiah, you have a point. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say Republicans have always loved either authoritarian regimes like Russia or China or Middle Eastern like religious regimes, because they want that here. Now, the only reason why it doesn't work here is because we have laws of man, like laws of like, yes, they weren't perfect, but we have rules of law that you can't establish a country religion, or you can't do this. In those countries, they don't have that. It's always been kings and monarchs. So, so people are used to authoritarian rule, but we don't have that here. So they're having to, like, the Republicans here are having to work through all of these like legal like barriers to get the theocracy they have, because the laws we first had don't allow that.
It's also just that, of course, there are those that want to be at the top of that power structure.
Sure.
But we also have people who are authoritarian in the sense that they want to be the one licking the boot. Yeah. They so desperately want some daddy to step on them, and that's what they're everything for that.
So it's like hardcore BDSM.
Except it's not safe, sane, or consensual.
Well, this is true. Yeah. The thing is, just to point Nick's point. I mean, I'm not surprised. I mean, that some people would want to do something stupid like that, like kicking Russian students out. It's the same, but you think that our history is loaded with examples like this. So we have COVID, which, supposedly, originated in China, and, anti-Asian sentiment, and not just even against Chinese people, all Asians, anyone who looks vaguely Asian, right-wing bigots want to attack. When it was, after 9/11, anyone who looked vaguely, Central, Middle Eastern or Central Asian. So like Sikhs who are like, not Muslim and not even from the same countries, they're getting killed because bigots can't tell the difference. And also belies the whole point that, well, anti-Islamophobia isn't racism because Islam isn't a race. Like, well, then why do you kill a bunch of Sikhs? Because they happen to vaguely look like the people you think are Muslim,
They're not afraid of that.
And the Japanese internment. I mean,
I mean, they're not afraid of Albanians. They're Muslim too.
Yeah. Well, speaking of like the right wing sort of siding with Putin in this, there was a Tucker Carlson clip going around on Twitter last week before the invasion actually happened. But when it seemed like inevitable, everybody was saying like any day now the invasion is actually going to take place. And there was this clip from Tucker Carlson saying like, have you ever asked yourself, like, why are you mad at Putin? Why do you hate Vladimir Putin? And then he goes into all this like cancel culture. He goes into all this like cancel culture stuff. And I'm like, dude, he's a murderer.
Yeah, but he didn't call me racist.
Yeah, exactly.
Putin was a murderer before the 7th.
Exactly.
No, murder is when it's not legal. When you're in the head of the government and you can say that it's legal, then it's not.
No, but remember that he used to be.
No, but he never claims it's legal. He never said it was legal. He tried to do it like through secretive paths, circumventing the law. He really hates the law, but he's got to have some of it because he needs to some things to justify.
Other people.
Yeah, the law is for other people. That's the thing. Yeah.
Well, the weird thing about the Ukraine invasion was the two breakaway republics, the Donetsk and the Luhansk. That's only recognized by Putin. It's not recognized by anyone else.
Yeah. And whenever he recognized them, we thought, okay, maybe he's just rolling an army into those republics and not attacking Ukraine proper. It's bad. We will be sanctioned, but it's not war. And then basically the next day he declares all-out war, first.
Well,
we thought it would be more like he invades those republics, and then the Ukrainian army doesn't like it, and he uses it as pretext or something, because there was a serious attempt to manufacture a good pretext. But everybody who was doing it failed miserably. Basically, there was no pretext.
Right. Well, one thing too that I think is kind of interesting and sad is that, obviously, as Vlad said, most Russians, at least that are able to speak out, are against it. But who's also apparently against it is the Russian soldiers that are doing it, because they
have no idea where they are.
The guys that are captured, they're like, we don't know where we are. We don't know where we're going. We don't know who we're supposed to shoot at because they look like us. And the thing is, here's the thing that's, to me, that shows the utter incompetence and hubris of Putin, because they're supporting a military operation. Kiev is like just under 60 miles away from the Belarus border, and their forces are running out of ammo, fuel, and food. After 3 days, if you can't support a military operation 60 miles from your house, you're obviously incompetent. But and again, because this is hubris, though, he is locked in this thing because, as Vlad said, he surrounded himself with yes men for 2 decades. So he has no fucking clue as what he's doing, and he won't listen to the people who do. So this is why they're failing miserably. And I mean, I'm glad they're failing miserable, but I feel bad for the
No, I mean, Russia as a state is bad at everything they try to do. Like, they tried to poison the Navalny guy, and they failed miserably. They even failed miserably at pretending they didn't, because he made that investigation, and he basically called the guy and pretended to be someone different, and the guy basically said everything on an open phone.
I mean,
that's the thing.
There's a couple of things.
Basically, Russian state is a joke, but it's a joke that has nuclear weapons.
Exactly.
That's the scary part.
Yeah, there's a couple of things going on here. 50 some odd years ago, my family was vacationing in Mexico City, and we were following what was going on with exercises going around Czechoslovakia, which was being headed up by your friend of mine, Leonid Brezhnev. And I would pick up the International Herald Tribune every morning. We were watching what was going on. And one day I pick it up and I go, oh, crap, walk into my dad's room and it says, it happened. They invaded, Czechoslovakia. If you take a look at the deployment of Russian forces and during the Czech action, and you take a look what was going on during the Ukrainian action, they're deployed in Belarus, they're deployed in Western Russia, they're deployed in Crimea and in the Black Sea. They had them surrounded on 3 sides. Somebody tell me this is just an exercise. I dare you.
Yeah.
Well, it also reminded me a lot of Hitler, because I was just watching a documentary about Hitler in World War II, and a lot of this reminds me of the Sudetenland. Because Hitler also
it reminds everybody of that.
Yeah,
straight out.
Again, we are not the Nazi Germany, as in we don't have not maybe majority, but at least half the people in our country supporting this actively. Even the people who are bought into the whole propaganda thing are probably, the Ukrainians are probably to blame, and the West is probably to blame, like my mother says, but she's still terrified by the prospect of any kind of real war. And here's where I wanted to put in the terrifying part of it that terrifies me right now the most. You know how the Ukrainian side reports that there were like over 4,000 Russian soldiers killed? I don't know if it's exaggerated or not. That's not the point. The thing is that the Russian ministry does not report any casualties at all. So basically, we know Russian people die there. It's not possible for them to not die there. And we know they are dying there horribly. And basically, they are not telling their relatives where those people are. And they are not planning on telling their relatives where those people are and how they died.
Exactly.
That would reflect openness. That would reflect glasnost.
Yeah, Ukraine has created a website where they're posting confirmed killed and confirmed captured Russian soldiers.
And they wanted to ask like the International Red Cross to send them away to Russia. The thing is, Russia is probably not into getting those bodies. Because the thing about Russia is that whenever the Soviet Union was falling, a lot of those dead bodies were coming back from like Afghanistan when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, and people were done with it. People were not having it. People were not having their young kids, like 18 years old or 19 years old, being sent somewhere far away and killed there for no reason whatsoever. They were not buying this. And the same thing happened with Chechnya, though on a smaller scale, and that's how Putin came to power, because people were not having this war, and then Putin basically talked Chechnya into joining Russia on its side, like he talked some field commander into this thing, and now basically the son of that field commander is like the leader of Chechnya and one of the worst people alive right now, probably worse than Putin if it comes to like pure evil. Because Russian soldiers are not motivated to fight in this war, and soldiers from Chechnya are. They are motivated.
Has anyone seen anything about the I don't know what else to call it, the mobile crematoriums?
Yeah, that was the part I was talking about. Yeah. About how Russian side doesn't want to.
They don't want numbers. They don't want
numbers. They don't want knowledge, and that's why I'm scared of internet going dark in Russia. Because if internet going dark in Russia, we are basically in informational vacuum, and we don't know if people are drafted or how many people are drafted and where they are sent. And basically, there will be no law after that, because propaganda can claim also, well, nothing is happening at all, and then they will just like grab people from the streets and send them after the war. Like in the Soviet Union, things like this happened like in 1941 and 1942, but like not in the rest of times. And even like in World War II, in the worst of times, the Soviet Union at least tried to send the information about the deceased back to the relatives.
Oh, wow.
They at least tried.
Matt, you've had your hand up for a while. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm asking, are you guys able to actually see the one independent Russian outlet over there? I know they've been censored.
Medusa. We are reading it every day.
Okay.
So far, they are not even blocked, but we all have VPN for that case.
Oh, that's good. I'm on it.
Like you might talk any kind of trash about VPNs and how they are not actual privacy. Well, they are not privacy for our people. They are access to information for our people.
Yeah.
Good point.
One thing about actually 2 points really related to the Republicans in this country and their current behavior and how they've been in general with regard to Russia. Here's the thing that I find sickening and fascinating at the same time. So one of the so obviously right now they're all, sucking Putin's dick and saying this is great and justified and all that. But what's strange to me is that they also use their anti-communist thing, even though Russia's not really, it's not like the Soviet Union days.
40 years ago, anyway. Yeah.
Right, but of course, they keep still using the same rhetoric over and over because they're stupid and ridiculous and they don't change. But here's the thing: they use the justification for the United States having ridiculously large military and spending all this money because of fear about Russia. So they basically love and hate Russia, or at least they do it, or they hate Russia selectively when they means more funding for the military industrial complex. But what's interesting about this, so they've been stoking the fears. And I remember about a year and a half ago, I got into this argument with a guy who plays one of the games that I play. Unfortunately, when you play strategy games, you run into a lot of right-wing types. And this guy was arguing with me, and he turns out he's actually a defense analyst. And I was appalled because he showed me this report he did and stoking the anti-Russian fears about attacking the West and attacking Western Europe. And you know, he sends me the number, you know, his thing, and it's got numbers in it. And I'm like, well, these are not scary numbers. If you look at what the Europeans have, you look at what we have, these are not scary numbers. This does not represent, even if the Russians were more, if their military was more competent than what we're seeing now, this would not be enough to justify what we're spending on our military. And he's like going off, and they can do this and they can do that. And I feel like I blocked the guy. I wish I could remember his name. I'd love to look him up again and stick this up his ass and saying, you're talking to, like, they could do all this shit and conquer Western Europe. They can't even conquer their next door neighbor. You know,
that's what I'm actually hoping for, is that Russia basically is not capable of conquering Ukraine the way it is.
Right.
Because the prospects of things going further, if it goes through and if they capture Ukraine and if it all goes to plan, are rather scary. Again, the best possible course of action then is that Putin just stops. He's done what he wanted to do. He probably doesn't leave and doesn't go out of Belarus with his army. So Belarus is basically going into Russia right now. They've let the Russian military in. This is done. This is a done deal.
Yeah.
They've done it willingly. But I really sincerely hope then it stops.
That's not how it works, though.
Yeah, but except it won't stop there. I mean, as long as there's a Russian presence in Ukraine, I'll guarantee you there'll be a guerrilla actions all over the place in Ukraine.
There'll be a lot of guerrilla action. Yeah. It will be awful. But then I am in this horrible realization that basically right now our country is left without the first thing to go is like civil aviation. We are out of civil aviation because basically nobody owns planes. No airline owns aircraft. All the aircraft are leased from some islands in Pacific, if you know the deal. And basically the sanctions imply that all the aircraft now have to be returned. All the Airbus and Boeing aircraft we have. We have some native produced aircraft, but they suck. They legitimately suck.
Yeah.
Like they are on the ground half the time on maintenance because it's scary to fly them otherwise. Yeah,
Nick,
it's not even a joke.
Nick,
they are.
I'm sorry. I may have to get going early. Family's birthday and all that. But just in case I do have to disappear in a few minutes, I just wanted to point out two things. One, what I said about Republicans, I don't mean 100% of them. I don't mean every single one. Just those who continue to support the Greg Abbotts and Matt Gaetzes and Jim Jordans and Marjorie Taylor Greenes of the world, which is a lot of them.
So 80% of Republicans.
Yeah. So look, if they don't want me to think badly of them, if they don't want me to think that they're a bunch of crazy people, well, they could stop voting for Republicans. Just switch sides. You know, they could just stop watching Tucker Carlson's White Power Hour every night.
Yeah. Or they could start coalescing around more reasonable Republicans, which would be, if that were to happen, you'd find my jaw loitering on the carpet.
Nick,
what's a reasonable Republican?
Nick, that's not very nice to crazy people. I'll just say, you know.
Sanity's overrated anyway.
Okay, about the Republicans and switching sides. I wanted to tell you like a year ago, basically, whenever we started talking, that whenever the whole Marjorie Taylor Greene thing was coming out about how crazy she is and about how utterly unhinged she is, I was going to tell you, like, we have state propaganda, and basically their propaganda shows is Marjorie Taylor Greene from 9 to 5, or maybe from 7 o'clock, 7 o'clock to like midnight or whenever their shows are coming out.
I'm not. Didn't you have another point? What was the other thing?
Yes. What you were saying, Vovacat, about Putin, about how he's very isolated, how he's like cut himself off from everybody except these yes men. He has this distorted view of the world. I remember Trump saying exactly that about him. And you see it time and again. This is how mob bosses run things. Yes. They don't look for competence. They look for loyalty. So they hire a bunch of idiots like the brothers and whatever. And this is why all those regimes eventually collapse on themselves. Yes. And I look at Trump and I look at Putin. I'm like, why is it always these types who run the world? We have this idea that, it's because they're cruel, and you kind of need to be cruel to get into those positions of power because you're willing to step on people.
Have you seen the long table?
But why is it always these dumb, very insecure, soft, weak men who try to project this image of strength, but they're not strong? Why is it always those who get everything
because they appeal to the visceral, like lizard brain in human beings.
Exactly.
And basically when people are scared or frightened or they're under stress, they tend to react viscerally to that stuff. Plus, right-wing rhetoric is simplistic, so it's easy to understand.
People like simple answers.
Liberal thought, whether you're center liberal or leftist or everything in between, it takes subtlety and thought and people. And so what ends up happening is people think, oh, you're talking down to me. Oh, grug. And so yes, because this is a complex topic, and I can't come up with a simple slogan. And even when we do come up with a simple slogan, somebody on our side comes up with a reason why it's too simplistic, like Black Lives Matter or the 1%, which I think both are great, or defund the police, again, another great thing. And then, but it's our own side that comes up with a reason why we shouldn't. We're very self-defeating. That's another problem too.
Well, I was on the stream with like a bunch of leftists, and like we somehow agreed more or less. It's word with the 400 variations of leftists there are. There's always going to be like arguments. That's just always going to happen.
Well, and that's okay. It's legitimate to say, okay, have different views, but we have a kind of a very proprietary nature of all the little individual groups, and so there's a lot of agreements between even center left and far left, and I'm talking about globally, not just US, but yet we break into our little things and like, no, I don't like that person because they're slightly different than me, and act like, if there's a little bit of separation, then you're way over there or way over there on the other side. Like I've had people like, and I do the political compass, and I come out squarely in the absolute dead center of the liberal axis and the libertarian axis. But I've run into people who, to listen to them talk, you would think that I'm like, a shade just to the left of Hitler, because I don't agree with every single thing that they want to do. And this is ridiculous.
A lot of absolutism.
A lot of absolutism and a lot of purity tests and all this kind of shit, and inflexibility, again, all around, not just blaming leftists. Within the thing, it's like, it's like, and like there's this inflexibility of, somehow if we compromise with one another, not compromise with the other side, but compromise with one another, that somehow that's capitulation, and that's ridiculous.
So I just want to say, I'm about to leave because it sounds like stuff's happening out there. I just want to say I'm sorry for using the word crazy, especially given my own history and all my projects. I should know better than to use that word disparagingly.
Oh yeah,
but it is kind
Nick,
of serious.
Sanity's overrated anyway, Nick. Don't worry about it.
All right. Well, other thing I wanted to note before I split. This is tabletop RPG series Warhammer 40K. It takes place 40,000 years from now. It is the worst possible outcome of humans still being around that far in the future. But the funny thing is, it's also a case of life imitating art, because the whole thing was, there are no good guys in Warhammer. Humans have essentially become space Nazis, oppressing every other species in the cosmos because humans are the best. And the funny thing is, like, most of those actually are bad. It's like everybody in Warhammer is bad. But the funny thing is, like, it's got all this over-the-top imagery. And the Emperor, who conquered mankind and essentially banned religion, tried to make us enlightened, he himself is basically a god. And he has a massive ego. He's like, guys, I swear I'm not a god. I mean, I know I wear golden armor and I have wings and a crown and a flaming sword, but you are not under any circumstances to worship me as a god, even though I tell you to do everything I say down to the letter. And so he did not want to be worshipped by man. He didn't want to be worshipped by mankind. And what happens? He ends up grievously injured, essentially a skeleton with his soul still in it, and he's strapped to his golden life support throne and worshipped against his will for all eternity. That's some monkey paw shit.
I think maybe he just didn't like the singing. It was all about, no songs. Like, I just don't like the singing. Y'all just aren't very good at it.
But the funny thing is, this then happened in a meta sense, because the creators of 40K, they made it to almost be like a satire of, of fascism and all that. And what do you know? People jumped into it unironically. They saw all the bad stuff and like, no, let's do that. And it's like, guys, so just like the emperor, didn't want people worshiping him and was then worshipped against his will forever. The creators of 40K didn't want to take it that seriously, and then people embraced it unironically. It's the exact same shit.
Well, not only that, same thing happened with Monopoly. Like, it was created to be a deconstruction of capitalism, and specifically of the landed class. And in order to win, you have to do things that are, morally questionable. And that people are like, yeah, let's do that.
Oh yeah, and people get off on like tearing somebody else's down and bankrupting their allies. That was the whole point of saying, see how bad it is when all the wealth is concentrated with too few people that the average person can't get by, and they're like, let's do that.
They didn't think that through very well. Let's make a game out of how awful you can treat other people.
Later, Nick.
See you later. Okay, I want after you said about ironic and unironic things, I wanted to say one thing.
Yeah.
You know how people always talk about Star Wars, like the Galactic Empire is too bad of a villain to really exist?
Yeah.
Well, look at Putin, and then look at Palpatine.
Yeah.
What do you see? Is it not the same thing? Is it not like an emperor guy who is very isolated from all of his followers? Is it not the army that is huge and scary but incompetent as hell? Like the stormtroopers that you can basically knock out with a kick.
Yeah, and, take a look at Hitler at the end of World War II. He was just as isolated, and he was in his bunker. And the only communication he had with anyone was with his upper tier generals. He had no idea what was going on the front. None.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, this is the thing. A friend of mine. This was during the Iraq War when Abu Ghraib broke, when we all found out about these horrible things that are going on in our names, and so I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and he was never really sanguine on the war in the first place, and so we were talking about it, and I blame Tony Blair made me think that it might have been necessary, but obviously Tony Blair lied to me, so I was duped. But anyway, so we're talking about it, and he was saying, "Oh, Joe, you're taking a different position." I said, "Well, look, we've presented ourselves and all my life as the good guys, and we've crossed a line that good guys don't cross. And to me, like, torture, that it's unjustifiable, and so we were talking about that. And I said, this is the difference between, and I was very upset because we had friends who were like trying to come up with justifications for why torture was okay in this particular case. So, I said, look, the difference between being the good guy and the bad guy most often is not even motivations, it's methods, it's what you're willing to do. If you get into that ends justify the means thing, that's very often the difference. Because so and I said, so this is the problem. If you're going to be the good guy, then there are lines you cannot cross, and you can't use, well, my enemy does it as a justification. Because if you're basically saying your enemy is a bad guy because he does X, Y, and Z, and then you emulate it, well, you've basically tacitly admitted that you are now a bad guy too. And there can be, both sides can be the bad guy. So he said, well, he said to me, he said, well, how does good ever win then? Because if the bad guy doesn't have any limits and the good guy has to have limits, so how do you ever beat that when they can spray biological weapons, they can do all these things that the good guy can't do? And I said, well, very often and most often comes down to hubris, because people who basically operate in a mindset that there are no limits start to believe that limits don't exist. And even on the physical plane, that they can do and achieve whatever they want. They can make it so by the sheer force of will. So they also tend to think that they're more brilliant than they really are. So they tend to get themselves into situations where they couldn't possibly win, but they believe they could. They've convinced themselves, and they surround themselves with yes men, because again, that's their hubris, because they can't deal with anyone telling them anything different. And that eventually this leads to their downfall. Hitler, you think about ridiculous stuff he did, and beyond, killing all the Jews and all that. But just like the idea, like when the Me-262 Schwalbe aircraft was developed, the first jet fighter. It was never going to be a bomber. He wanted it to be a bomber. He insisted that this plane was going to be a bomber. And his basically, his aircraft, manufacturers spent 2 years trying to make this into a bomber because he demanded it. And in the meantime, they could have started producing it for the defense of Germany. And had they done so, the battle for Germany would have gone a lot differently. It would have been a much harder. Germany might have actually been able to sue for peace or maintain certain territory. But because they wasted all this time, because he insisted, because he's decided, because he thinks he's a genius when he isn't. So basically, he frittered away a valuable resource that his country had.
Welcome to the wonderful world of Dunning-Kruger.
Yeah.
Well, and just like Trump's the same thing, right? Trump's the same way. He thinks he's fucking brilliant, and he surrounds himself with yes men, like Nick was saying, mob mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, William Goldman talks about it in the entertainment sphere. He calls it star mentality. And what happens is when everybody tells you that your ideas are brilliant, you start, we see the converse in abuse victims. They are incapable of believing good things about themselves. In the same way, when when everybody around you is telling you you're amazing, you start to believe them.
Yeah.
Would you also say that's how the Japanese deployed their large mega battleships the same way?
Probably. I have to research that to confirm, but yeah.
Basically, yeah. I mean,
it's almost like the white man syndrome, as it were, mediocre white man syndrome. My friend, Joey, the indigenous detective, says the most infuriating case of subcategory of humans is the mediocre white man that thinks they're way smarter than they are. And a great example is new atheism, as it were, especially thought leaders, as it were. Or this, actually, Robert Emmons also mentioned this on his podcast, this is why engineers usually become terrorists, because they are figuring out this one thing in engineering and so like that, and because of that, they think they can solve all the other problems when they don't.
Yeah, so you're listening to Robert Evans.
Yes, yes, I do.
Amazing.
Let's be careful with this. I'm a retired engineer.
Yeah, and I'm a current one. So,
quiet, you terrorists.
Yeah.
Usually, he said, usually.
Not all engineers.
Not all engineers.
Hashtag not all engineers.
Yeah.
Okay, so
some of them build moon rockets too, just for the record.
Okay. My engineering background is perhaps somewhat departed from the average engineer in that I had to go in and take care of the stuff that had broke. And one of the reasons why a lot of engineers out there don't like field service is because we have a tendency to show up their problems. And which puts me in a tenuous position, but it's a tenuous position I held for 30 years and I got awfully good at it.
Yeah, I actually I know Vovicat's next. I just want to jump in just to kind of piggyback off what Lauren said. It is true. There are people that you go in and there's been situations when I've told customers I've identified, in addition to whatever problem they had today, I identified some other problem that they didn't want to acknowledge or admit to, and then they don't do it, and then shit goes tits up, and then they're like, this thing, what, do the thing. Like, I've been telling you, here's all the emails and here's the quotes and all the things I've been telling you that this shit was going to go tits up months ago, and you can't blame me that you didn't do the thing I told you to do.
Oh, yes, they can. They can always blame you, just not reasonably. But then the whole point, the problem is...
about engineering and science. What I wanted to say about engineering and science is that while engineers might have some hubris about themselves, right now what I am seeing is that scientists pretty much as the people of art are basically probably the most outspoken community in favor of peace we have right now. Because yesterday I saw somebody posted in our university on our stadium covered with snow, somebody wrote those huge letters which say no to war. And again, this person, when they are found, is probably getting expelled. Because this is like overt political messaging, and we already had scary news. They are not confirmed, so I am not saying right now that this is happening or this is not happening. That some students that are Ukrainian citizens have been harassed by the administration with some or other form of questions. So far, nobody is knowingly getting expelled, because I'm pretty sure when they do things like that, there will be an outrage on university level. Because, as you know, universities, they outlast dictators, revolutions, centuries, whatever. Universities stand. This is one thing that's standing. And another thing I wanted to say about, basically, Geek talked about Robert Evans and his podcast, and the last episode, it was like a 4-episode series on Tsar Nicholas II. You probably already heard it, Geek. And I was listening to it in my car for like the last 2 weeks when it was coming out, and when 24th happened, it all felt like a horrifying foreshadowing. It all felt like incredibly up to the point, because what Nicholas II did back in like the early 20th century is that he was, in order to calm down the protests in his country against himself, he was willing to basically have this small victorious war against Japan. And as Robert Evans said, he was racist against Japan because those were not white people. And then somehow 2/3 of the whole Russian ocean fleet got sunk somehow. Nobody knows how, but it happened. Yeah. And then when World War I happened, he was basically willing to lead the military himself. Like, no, we have qualified generals, right? Yeah, we do, but I am willing to lead it all myself. And it went horribly, as you might
No, sir, you really don't have to do that.
Yeah. And everybody tried to stop him. At least Tsar Nicholas II didn't have all the, everybody around him as yes men. Some people, some nobility, and some people that surrounded him with some money and power were against it because they had some thought in their heads. Right now, everybody who is a rich person around Putin is basically dependent on Putin. If Putin doesn't want them to be rich, they are not going to be rich. That's all about it. They might be all they want against the war, and they might be against the war for pure egotistical reasons that don't make them good people, because they have all those yachts and all those villas and all those houses abroad, and they have all this money abroad stored in some banks. And right now, basically, this is all getting taken away. And even if it's not getting taken away from them personally with sanctions, it's getting taken away from them because nobody is basically letting them out of Russia. And they don't have anything important in Russia. They don't want to be in Russia. Russia basically sucks for them because we don't have anything really that good anywhere close. They're not going even to Crimea to have a rest.
So here's a question.
Because it's not that cool.
So now, is there any chance at all, from your point of view, for the oligarchs to kind of take action against Putin? Yeah, there is. It's probably the most likely way he's going to get overthrown, because that's what you were talking in the beginning. It's usually the nobility. But then the problem is that if it happens, then we get another awful dictator that probably will be not as bad for the first 5 years. And then, I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll take it now. And another thing, the whole deal about nuclear weapons and that thing. The one elephant in the room, which everybody is scared of, but nobody wants to talk about, but everybody talks about at the same time. And in a way, why is not NATO interfering with Ukraine? Because I've heard a lot of people right now wanting NATO to interfere, because this is scary. Because as you may know, many people are casually racist, and this is white people being killed. And many people want to interfere. And again, this probably might sound like a good idea on the first hand, but nobody is doing it because, if Americans start shooting Russians, this is World War III, and then all bets are off.
Oh yeah.
The thing is Putin willing to press the big red button? I don't know. Is he capable of doing so? Yes, absolutely yes. This is a definitive. Because whenever he is going to press the big red button, he is not going to be in Russia. He is going to be on some submarine in the Pacific. Because we are not aware of where he is right now. There was a proven case of him filming something of a direct translation, video translation, from him meeting some officials in Crimea. And then it was found out that basically somebody manufactured an identical office, that one that is knowingly existing in Crimea in some old palace. And it was actually in Moscow. So we know he has replicas of all places he can be, and he can be filmed in some distant, far-off locations where he is not taken out. So he is willing to press the big red button, but only if he knows that he is not getting taken out by it. He's not poisoning himself like Hitler did, because he has no ideology. This man has no ideology. Hitler did.
Right.
Yeah. Matt, real quick, and then we're going to wrap up.
Yeah, about what you were just saying, that the former declaration of war he had the same outfit on as the previous declaration. So it's like, yeah, you filmed them both on the same day, buddy, or you just didn't change clothes. So it's like,
no, they totally filmed it all in the same day.
Yeah, so it's like, geez, it's like, so going back to that, like, okay, it's obviously you just predetermine stuff and then just decides when to release it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, it's kind of like when U.S. intelligence, we released the idea that on the 19th they're going to do this pretextual thing to make it look like the Ukrainians attacked, and then of course on the 19th exactly that happens. It's like,
yeah.
But it's coincidence.
But again, there was this. You've probably seen this: Putin talking to his cabinet of security to accept Donetsk and Luhansk as sovereign republics or something, and it's horrible because all those yes men, they're basically shrinking. They're basically, a lot of them don't want to do it because they know where this is going and nobody wants war. But then, they tried to pose it as if it was like a live translation. They tried to make it so that it's like live, but then there were obvious montage cuts in it. But they were claiming it was live. So yeah, Russia as a state is bad at things. This is probably more horrifying than if they were good at things. Because probably if they were good at things, less people would die in Ukraine. You know the deal.
So
less people die in blister, it's not good.
Well, one thing I want to say real quick.
Yeah.
So I think there's an opportunity here. Once this is all over, I mean, I want to, right now people are just fighting going on, and that's really horrible. But when it's all said and done, there's an opportunity for people on the political left to push to reduce the U.S. military budget, because once again, we've shown now this idea that we have to worry about the Russians invading Western Europe and attacking our allies and all this kind of stuff. It's complete and utter nonsense, because for people that don't know, that 190,000, 200,000 Russian troops, that represents 70% of Russia's ground forces. So this is most of the nut. Unless they do call-ups, that's and
I am pretty sure if they want to, they will, and it will be horrifying, because I told you about this scenario I'm scared of. It's like information vacuum, and then they are drafting random people, and then they are making them into soldiers, and then it's basically using your population.
But my point, Vlad, is that's if they do that, that's detectable. Intelligence can detect that, hey, they're building up. So the idea that there's going to be this sudden jump off and there's going to be this attack and they're going to do X, Y, and Z is basically laid bare that's bullshit. So that if they would have, it's just like the people that are somehow think that China is going to invade us. Oh, they have a 1 million-man army, and they don't have anywhere near the shipping that it would take to move hundreds of thousands of troops and then supply hundreds of thousands of troops, 7,000 miles away from home. This is an opportunity to basically stop wasting money on new ways to blow people up but at the same time,
it's not necessarily about. That's not what it's necessarily about. Having an enormous military is not necessarily. It's never been about stopping any harm to us. It's about extending our might and allowing us to have a massive debt that is basically other countries paying tribute to us by a lot. If the biggest kid in school says, "Hey, let me borrow 35 cents for milk." I mean, they ain't borrowing that. That is not borrowing.
But the funny thing is, we can literally cut our military in half and still have more than everybody else in the world. Yeah. So it's like, we can still do that and then spend the rest.
Display of power. The extravagance is part of it.
But I mean, and spend the rest of that on our military, because again, my last point for today will be, there's a lot of people think that somehow there's not going to be jobs anymore, that automation, mechanization is basically taking over. I go on all these plants and see other things. I see so many jobs that don't get done, and not even counting the infrastructure just within companies. And then you throw in the infrastructure thing. There's plenty of jobs to be had. We're just not spending the money on the things that need to get done. And if we did that, there would be jobs aplenty. And because the right wing has dumbed down our education system over the last 60 years, a lot of Americans don't qualify for the jobs of today and tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
okay. So I wanted to finish with the whole thing.
Last word from Vlad. Go ahead.
Yeah. Last word from me. Okay. First of all, just what I wanted to say. I am a pacifist. whatever happens next, for me, this is scary. I am willing for this to stop in any way, shape, or form. If the peace talks go through, and if the peace is like, even if it's a bad peace, if it's achieved, it's better than what's going on now. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that now I am coming to this horrible realization that things for my country and my people are not getting better before this freak of a man is away from power. And this is a bad thought, because so far he's been pretty resilient in his position, and we don't know if it's easy to remove him from his position. So far all our efforts to do so were like futile and nil. And the last thing I wanted to say is that, again, for all the people that hear us today, and for all the people on the live stream, because I believe we are still on it, right?
Yes.
Yes, we are still on.
Yes, for all the people out there, whenever you can, please say Putin instead of Russia. This is not the war of the Russian people. We didn't vote for this. I didn't choose this president. Nobody did. And I know there are people in Russia who support this. Most of them are just propaganda victims. Most of them can be reasoned with. So no, it's not Russia doing this. Even most Russian soldiers are not motivated to fight where they fight. That's probably why they are so ineffective, and why this is turning into the murder of like a lot of those soldiers as well. I'm not saying they are doing a good thing. I'm not saying Ukrainians have no right to defend themselves. They have all the right to defend themselves, and may them defend themselves. I'm actually rooting for them, however horrific this might sound. But still, this is not the war of the Russian people. We're all victims here. Most of us. Not all of us. Most of us are.
I'm glad you made that. I'm glad you made that point.
We are all victims here. We are all victims here of a cartoon villain with real nuclear weapons. He's a cartoon villain.
Stay safe, man.
Yeah, really real. And thanks for being with us, and thanks for saying what you had to say. And I'm glad you made that last point, especially because I think that's really important. That it's not Russia doing this, or it's not the entirety of the Russian people doing this. It's Vladimir Putin. It's his government that is doing this, and
people who are being dragged into it.
Yeah, people who are being dragged into it. And so I think that's really important that we all keep that in mind. I also wanted to mention in the video description for this live stream are a couple of links that anyone who feels motivated and is able to can follow to donate to support the Ukrainian army. And because hopefully, you know, I don't, who knows how this is all going to go and how long this is going to last. But if you are willing and able to make a donation to support the Ukrainian army, I think that would be terrific. And there are a couple of links in the video description where you can do just that. So
can I say one last thing, like quick?
Yeah, real quick.
Real quick.
Yeah, I was trying to say, like, because I don't have any Slavic in me, but I was trying to like find ways to like support them. So
yeah,
I do. I have everything in me.
You have everything. You contain multitudes.
I've discovered my updated thing. I've got Middle Eastern now, and I've got East Asian, and I've got and I know all the African stuff and the European stuff. I am the world.
Every time you find like a new thing and you run your genetic history, you always find something new. Because as long as I've known you, you've been occasionally you post your genetic profile. It's always like, oh damn, he found something else.
I joined MyHeritage, and MyHeritage, when you look at DNA matches, it shows flags of where the people are living.
Yeah, and
I'm getting matches to people in Spain and in Belgium and in Poland and Ukraine, and it's like, holy shit! Like I'm Israel, India. I'm and 23andMe, for any Black people out in the audience, 23andMe is now doing tribal identification. So I now know where my people come from. I am predominantly Igbo.
That's fantastic.
The thing about that is I feel like I wouldn't be welcome because I have autism, and I don't know if they kill people who have disabilities. So I'm good in America for that. Sorry.
Just stay here.
Stay here.
Anyway, that's it, everybody. Thank you all for joining me. Don't forget the links in the description. The charity links, as usual, are there, and also those links I just mentioned to support the Ukrainian army. Thanks, everybody, for joining me here on the call, and everybody watching. And we'll do this again next month. So take care, everybody, and we'll see you. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.